This experience has had a lasting impact on me, despite it occurring over 7 years ago. This may be a long one, but here's how it goes. My name is Jasmine. I'm currently 19 years old while writing this. This story takes place in North Texas, in the DFW area. This experience happened to me and my best friend Emily in 2017, the summer of our 7th grade year. We would always have sleepovers on the weekends, as we were both about 13 years old. This specific weekend, Emily would be sleeping over at my house. We both had boyfriends at the time, and hers planned to sneak over that night. Mine was out of town, and I had no problem with her boyfriend coming over and spending some time with her. We'll call her boyfriend at the time Kevin. Obviously, that is not his real name, but I would like to protect his privacy. Kevin had planned to come over later in the night when both of my parents were asleep. Emily and I spent the night just hanging out and getting ourselves ready for the night. We told Kevin to let us know when he was going to head over that way. We'd have the window ready for him to crawl through. We waited a while, and he texted her that he would be heading over soon. We giggled as Emily thought of the plan that would forever end up being the most horrifying thing we've ever experienced. Before Kevin would get to my house, we would meet him down the street and scare him. For reference, my house was at the top of this hill, and when you'd walk down, you'd be at the main road that led to the rest of the town. We both hopped out the window and began walking down my street that intersected with the main road. We made it down to the main road and began walking onto the street and towards this field area. I'd say it was about 12 or maybe 1 a.m. As we waited and waited in the field for Kevin, Emily realized she didn't have her phone. We had no way of knowing where Kevin would be and how close he was. We had no choice but to turn around and walk back up my street and head back to my house. We are turning the corner and about to head onto my street when I notice some sort of figure or silhouette of a person. I whispered over to Emily saying, "Dude, do you see that?" At first, she didn't notice it until I pointed and said, "That thing right there." We both are walking slowly towards the thing, as it looked like it was crouched over eating something or observing the ground below it. As we get a couple yards away, the thing turns towards us, sees us, and yelps out this horrifying, wretched, and raspy scream. I seriously cannot describe the volume and monstrous sound of that scream. It's something we both will never forget. After it screamed, it took off in one huge leaping, running motion on all fours and disappeared into the trees in my neighbor's yard. Emily and I wasted no time and hauled it up the road and straight to my house, trying to be as quiet as possible. We jumped into the window completely out of breath, whispering, "What the hell was that?" Shortly after, Kevin arrived at my house and we were frantic. We asked if it was him or if he was playing a prank or something. We bombarded him with so many questions, but when we asked him, "Did you hear that scream?" he replied with, "Yeah, I heard it." Immediately, we flocked to Google and tried to get answers as to what that thing was. It was tall with white skin that almost looked translucent and a cross between human and animal. It moved so fast and almost made no sound as it dashed. It had a huge mouth as it screamed and very long arms and legs. Weirdly enough, the head and features were small in comparison to the rest of its body. I'd never really paid attention to the term Skinwalker. I've always thought it was some sort of movie thing meant to scare people. But what we found on Google made the previous events feel very, very real. We read countless forums, experiences, and stories that sounded almost exactly like what we had gone through. To this day, we never truly figured out what we saw. That's why I'm writing to you, to reach an audience of people who would believe and possibly could explain what that thing was. To this day, I turn my brights on as I drive up my street when arriving home late. I hope I never see that thing again. If you have had any similar experiences, please comment below. And if you like the content, please consider subscribing. My name is Tom, and I don't know how I survived that night. After the fight between my friends and students of another college over some petty issues, several of my friends ended up in the hospital. Their parents didn't know about this yet, and I had to visit them, not just to check on them, but to give some money for their expenses. It was late, and the streets were empty. No taxis around, so I decided to use my bicycle. The air was cold, and every shadow seemed suspicious. The ride to the hospital was very difficult. I was not used to riding late at night, so my bike's headlamp only had a faint light and needed a battery change. The night was frightening. At the hospital, I handed over the money and saw my friends briefly. They were in bad shape, but I assured them things would be okay. It was almost midnight when I headed back home. The streets were even emptier, and my bike light barely cut through the darkness. Turning into a narrow alley, I saw a figure at the end. I thought it was someone who needed a lift, but I was in a single-seat bicycle, so I can't help it. Suddenly, the streetlights went out, and I was left with just my dim bike light. 3 figures appeared from different directions, wearing masks. Panic hit me. I wasn't involved in the fight, so why were they coming after me? I dropped my bike and ran. Their footsteps echoed behind me. I turned a corner and ended up in a disgusting dump yard. The smell was horrendous, making me gag. I hid behind a dumpster, shaking with fear. Their voices were close, rough, and definitely older. These weren't students. Why were they after me? "He went this way," one of them said, his voice gruff and authoritative. "Are you sure it's the right kid?" another one asked, his voice lower and raspier. Then they went a little far away so I couldn't hear rest of their conversations. I pressed myself against the dumpster, trying to stay quiet. The stench was overwhelming, making my eyes water. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they'd hear it. I bit my lip, the taste of blood mixing with the foul smell around me. Every noise made me flinch, expecting to be caught any second. "Check over there," the first one ordered, his voice closer now. I could hear the crunch of garbage under his feet. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually, the voices faded. I stayed put, terrified, until dawn. When I finally crawled out, I was filthy and smelled awful. Exhausted and relieved, I stumbled home. The figures were gone, but their memory haunted me. I couldn't believe what had happened, and the fear I felt that night would stay with me forever. And to this day, I don't know who they are and why they tried to catch me. I never told this to anyone except my best friends till now. If you have had any similar experiences, please comment below. And if you like the content, please consider subscribing.